Welcome to datascience.show, the podcast where data science meets executive leadership. We talk with top AI and analytics thought leaders about turning data into real business impact. If you're a C-level leader or data expert shaping the future, you're in the right place.
Imagine this. Inventory is stacked in a warehouse because a forecasting model missed a seasonal surge. The marketing team ran a new promotion, demand spiked, supply chain couldn't react fast enough, and the company wrote off millions because the model was treated like a one-off project instead of a living capability. I say that not to scare you, but to set the stakes plainly. Model degradation isn't a mysterious failure, it's a predictable business risk that costs real dollars. Today, I'm going to walk you through a decision-first playbook for model freshness, how to spot aging, align recalibration to your business calendar, and budget for it so predictive systems stay economically relevant.
Let me be clear about my frame. This is not an ops memo or a data team checklist. From my vantage, built on scaling enterprise AI and translating models into measurable outcomes, freshness is a governance and financing problem. If the board sees model drift as an engineering surprise, they won't fund it. If leaders treat it as a line item without decision triggers, it becomes reactive and expensive. So we start with a different question. What decisions depend on these models? And what loss do we tolerate before we act?
Next, define what we mean by model freshness in executive terms. There are a handful of board-ready signals you can present. First, performance decay curves. Track your primary KPI over time and show the slope of decline. Second, cohort slippage. Look at customer segments or cohorts and show when behavior deviates from the training population. Third, feature drift rate. Are key predictors changing distribution materially? Fourth, business impact thresholds. Translate statistical decay into revenue at risk or inventory cost. Those four signals form a concise dashboard executives can read without an ML PhD. A trend line, a cohort table, a feature stability metric, and a dollars at risk number.
Now, map freshness to your business calendar. Seasonality, promotions, quarter ends, product launches, even regulatory reporting cycles are calendar anchors for risk. Not every model needs the same cadence. Tier models by impact. Tier 1 are revenue-critical forecasts and fraud detectors. Think weekly or event trigger monitoring and tighter thresholds. Tier 2 are operational models like demand smoothing, monitor bi-weekly to monthly. Tier 3 are analytics models with low real-time impact. Quarterly checks may suffice. Overlay promotions and product launches as risk windows that temporarily tighten thresholds and require pre-launch validation runs. The point is simple. Align technical cadence to commercial cadence, so recalibration isn't an afterthought, but part of product planning. Budgeting is where a lot of this fails in the boardroom. You need a retraining runway with explicit buckets, routine recalibration spend, an emergency retrain reserve, and a validation sampling budget. Routine recalibration is planned and recurring. Think of it like maintenance, versioning, validation, and deployment checks. The emergency reserve is for calendar surprises, a sudden competitor move or supply shock, and should be sized as a percentage of the routine budget, depending on model impact. Validation sampling pays for human-in-the-loop checks, labeling, and production shadow runs. A simple approach: allocate routine budget as part of model TCO. Reserve 15 to 25% for emergencies, and set a small validation pool per model to support controlled retrains. Presenting these numbers as a percent of model-driven revenue or cost savings makes the ask tangible.
On the technical side, higher level, no deep math, there are 4 response patterns leaders should know. 1. Recalibrate, meaning retrain from the accumulated recent data and refresh thresholds. 2. Fine-tune, a smaller, targeted update when the core model is sound but needs local adjustment. 3. Bias correction. Apply a compensating control or ensemble to correct systematic skew without a full retrain. 4. Deploy compensating controls, business rules or human review gates that reduce exposure while you fix the model. For decision makers, the rule of thumb is cost versus lead time. If retrain costs are low and expected uplift high, prefer retrain. If retrains are expensive or risky, use staged bias correction and compensating controls with a rollback plan. Always follow a sample, validate, limited rollout, full deploy pattern to avoid noisy churn.
Governance and procurement are where you convert technical practice into funded capability. At governance level, require executive sponsor sign-off for runway allocations and include freshness KPIs in quarterly reporting. Define approval gates, detection to retrain decision, validation pass-fail, and deployment authorization. In procurement, ask for retrain SLAs in vendor contracts, portability clauses for model artifacts and data, and explicit pricing for retrain cycles. If you use third-party models, negotiate portability and retrain windows. Otherwise, you risk vendor lock-in, where freshness becomes prohibitively slow or costly. Simple contract language. Define a retrain SLA, a data export portability clause, and a clause that binds the vendor to support a staged rollback if a retrain harms performance.
Here's a practical 30-90-day pilot you can run to de-risk the budget ask. Week 1, inventory top models by impact, revenue exposure, compliance risk, and customer experience. Weeks 2 to 4, set conservative, auditable trigger thresholds on one high-impact model. Use the 4 signals I described. Weeks 4 to 6, run a controlled recalibration. Sample, validate with a holdout, and do a limited rollout to a subset of traffic or customers. Weeks 6 to 12, measure uplift, detect unintended side effects, and compile the economics, cost to retrain, validation spend, and incremental revenue or cost avoided. Finish with a single-page funding request, problem statement, pilot results, recommended runway, and ask. Make it fundable and time-bound. That pilot is your proof in the bank.
Leadership and impact. What roles own what? The CDO or head of analytics owns the freshness policy and measurement. Product and business owners own the decision thresholds tied to commercial risk. Finance should own the runway and reserve decisions. Create a steering cadence, monthly for Tier 1, quarterly for broader governance, where staleness burn rate, post-retrain uplift, and detection to retrain latency are table stakes. Staleness burn rate, how much value is being lost per week or month due to drift. Post-retrain uplift, the delta in the primary business metric after recalibration. Detection to retrain latency, time from signal to mitigated deploy. Report these 3 numbers up the chain, and nobody will treat freshness as engineering folklore again.
Before I wrap up, 3 simple executive actions you can take this week. 1. Sponsor a 30-90-day pilot and ask for a single-page funding request. 2. Require your procurement team to add retrain SLAs and portability clauses to any model vendor contract. 3. Add a freshness metric, staleness burn rate, to your executive dashboard. Those moves make freshness a funded capability instead of an invisible technical cost.
If you want the checklist I mentioned, a board-ready freshness checklist, and a 1-page funding template, visit datascience.show/modelfreshness and download it now. Use it to run the pilot, finance your runway, and bring clarity to the recalibration conversation. From models to measurable value, make freshness an explicit executive responsibility, and you'll protect the value your models are supposed to deliver.
That's the difference between models and value.
Thanks for listening to datascience.show. If you found value in this episode, subscribe, share it with your network, and join us next time as we explore how data science drives smarter decisions and better business outcomes.